Blindspot, Episode 12, Scientist's Hollow Fortune. I think they did a pretty good job in this episode showing us some new aspects of Jane's past. Um, we got some interesting answers. We sort of got the official answer as to what Orion is. It's basically just the location where they fake Jane's death. It's still, of course, like a huge question because we find out through the flashbacks in this episode, Jane's going through this military training, and initially I thought it was going to go through the process of showing us that she kind of avoided being sucked into the same route as the guy from this episode. She kind of ended up on a still a weird path, but slightly different. She wasn't like, experimented on completely. She just got involved with something else pretty crazy. But we find out that for whatever reason, she had to, show in front of everyone that she was quitting. And she ends up joining Orion, which really surprised me. I didn't think she'd be a part of it. I thought it would just be some big, mystery. But we find out that she's a part of it. We get a little bit on Carter again, where they give us some flashbacks of him a bit. And, it was interesting because the fact that he knew what Orion was and the fact that she was actually joining it means that in some aspect they were working together, although he never recognized her. She recognized him from like one flash memory she had a while back, and it was just in passing because she heard him say Orion. So, it was kind of interesting getting that little detail where she was meant to be a part of it, and I guess she was, but it's kind of like this weird mission slash location because obviously it's some sort of place, but I just thought that was really cool. It's like, okay, so in some way they were kind of, working together, but clearly not close enough to the point where Carter ever actually saw Jane, or at least remembered her, which I'm sure he would if he actually saw her. Because he'd be like, oh, you're the person that died. So I think he would have known that if he was actually on the mission. But I'm excited to learn more information about that. I'm glad they at least gave us that because, of course, when she's like, what is Orion? The guy was making the faces, like, you could tell in his head, he's like, well, I gotta go. So, of course, he tried that, but, Jane stops him. So we at least get a bit of an answer, even though, still the overall big mystery. But I was glad that we got some answers in this episode. She passed the test to show that she is loyal to whoever these people are that she used to know really well. And we get some other really good stuff out of her as well, aside from, the flashbacks. Just this case in general, and I guess it kind of ties into the flashbacks, but the case in general I thought was really good because it did connect a lot to her character, and we do find out at the end that the people that she's working with did know about, these other people that were doing the experiments and stuff, and they were kind of like, well, we don't approve of that, so we kind of go our own way, and they took the zip, and if I remember right, they used more on Jane, or maybe they used less. I can't really remember which way they did it, but it was a different quantity, and so basically that allowed for them to, wipe Jane's memory. So that's what they got from them, but they knew about who they were, and they knew what they were doing, and it was like, alright, we don't like that, but clearly whoever Jane was working with, they had their own weird illegal stuff going on, so it's like, alright, we will just all go our separate ways, and you do whatever you want. So I like this connection that we got from the character and how, when he first shows up, he's like completely distraught and he's just really messed up. It's like that he did have to die, but once they did the fight at the end and he had the gun, I was like, well, he's dead. And then he died. He got shot like less than a second later. He was dead. I was like, yeah, I saw that coming once he got the gun. But I did like the way they did it. I think also if they captured him, it probably would have given, too many answers because they probably could have worked through sort of this weird underground that, they found. But ultimately, I still like the way that it played out. This guy is, I believe they said he was like Air Force. He had an Air Force tattoo. So it's like he's clearly been taken from his family and everything. We find out that he's deemed dead, which shows a couple of similarities, especially when we get that sort of end sentence like Orion is where you died. So we get a couple of similarities between his situation and what happened with Jane. And then we see him go through this process, I think it was twice really, because he had his mind wiped in the beginning. And then once they actually captured him again, they wiped his mind, and that's kind of ultimately what led to him dying. But I love the way that it played out because Jane was constantly being hit with the past, where it's like, this happened and she's going through it piece by piece, but she sees herself in this guy, and he has a much worse run at it because he's barely even able to function because he has like such weird glimpses and parts of his past that he can remember, because all he had in the first part of the episode was like, where's my mom, what did they do with my mom, and that's all he could basically say. He was like, you can't do this to us, and he'd freak out when people like put their hands on him. But then when he was in the house, he was just standing in like a little girl's room and was like, where's my mom, and it was just like really weird stuff was happening to him. So I like the way it played out. Ultimately, it led to some very interesting stuff where we learned about these experiments on soldiers, and we don't really learn who this new group is, and we probably won't. It was just the female scientist from this episode, and that was pretty much it. Like, just the scientist, she was there, and then there's another scientist that got captured who wasn't even named later in the episode when they were in the cargo area or the storage facility. But I like the way they kind of ended things. The action scene I thought was actually pretty entertaining. Mostly the hand-to-hand stuff was pretty good. Reed had a pretty cool scene when he was in like I guess it was like the janitor's closet or something. But it started off funny to me because after he hit the guy with the fire extinguisher, it was like, alright, that was a cool move. And then he grabbed like this flimsy little stick, and it was like, at first it was like, because of course it's like a breakaway stick because it's TV, so everything is meant to like break when it's supposed to. But because they made it that way, when he actually hit the guy and it broke, it looked so flimsy to me. It was like, it was weird that it broke, because I was like, I know it's supposed to break super easy, but it was, for one, it was like he pulled a random stick out of nowhere, because it wasn't like a mop or anything. It really was just, here's a stick next to the door for whatever reason. He just picked it up and hit the guy in the back. And then, it broke so easily. I was like, that just seemed really weird. That kind of came out of nowhere. Like, why would he switch to this random stick? Because he was holding the fire extinguisher. He didn't throw it. He kind of like blocked the guy and hit him in the face. And then he dropped it and grabbed this stick and hit him like once. And then they went back to like hand to hand. And he almost died because he was getting choked and stuff. And it was just kind of funny looking at that. And then I was thinking, like, it would be so funny if the whole fight was him just picking up stuff and, like, hitting this guy with it. But he does end up grabbing another item when he grabs whatever piece of glass that wasn't, hits the guy in the head. But that stick part just stood out to me. I was like, that just looks so flimsy, and it was just really funny to me. But I still enjoyed that. Definitely like the hand-to-hand stuff between Jane and the guy. Of course, I don't remember his name. But I like the hand-to-hand combat between the two of them. Lots of twists. Like, it seemed like for the most part, one person was holding on to the other throughout that entire fight. Like, there were a couple of parts where they seemed separated, but for the most part, it was like, I got your arm, and then someone reverses it, and it's like, I got your arm now, and then they were flipping each other on the ground, and then the other person would still get dragged down. So it was kind of cool watching that, because they were caught in like this weird like infinite grapple sort of thing, it seemed. But it was definitely fun. It also gave us a really great moment, mostly towards the end when Jane was kind of completing her test mission, when she talks to Mayfair, and it's like, I didn't mean to, kind of stand against you or confront you, but you shouldn't have let him go. And she actually kind of spoke up, and she was really upset because she felt, this huge connection. Of course, this connection she was hiding from everyone, but she felt this huge connection, and it's like, you're kind of the reason that, he ended up dead a little bit, is kind of how she was putting it. Like, you should have fought harder. But I thought that was really interesting. It was like the first time she's ever done that, and of course, the idea that she's not really, one of them is just all in her head right now and doing these tests, and of course, going through with it kind of, once again proves her loyalty. So I'm not sure where things are going to be headed. Kurt has a really good moment in this episode with his father, but before that, he played it very interesting with Jane, where he was like, he acted as if he wasn't there, and I guess it was just like, oh, I wasn't there, crazy. So he was kind of hiding away from, kind of being hurt, but he had a great moment with his dad at the end of this episode, and we find out the truth, which was another great moment, because I was like, I want to know the answer as well, like, how is he involved? And we find out that he wasn't. Hopefully that's not a lie, and then it comes out that he totally lied about trying to kill himself, and he was just doing like some great acting in front of his son. But we find out that Kurt's dad was missing for 3 hours because he drove out to this lake to try to kill himself, and I was very surprised by that, because I thought for sure he was somehow involved, maybe like unintentionally, or something happened that was really weird, but he was just trying to kill himself. He was just absent because he was trying to, disappear forever pretty much. So I thought that was a great scene. And, they're both breaking down, and his father kind of gives him the reasoning why he never told him. Was like, I can't remember what he said about their mother. I think he said like, your mother knew the real me, always, and it was like your sister never listened to anyone anyway. But I wanted you really far away because I didn't want you to kind of turn out like me. And I was thinking like, kind of failed because he pushed him away. It was sort of trying to, nurture you in a sort of backwards way, and it of course equals the exact same person in a weird sense. So I thought that was a really great scene, and they're both kind of breaking down and stuff. But I like that answer. And then um, basically during that same scene, or the scenes, I can't remember if it was before or after. I believe it was after, but we find out that the person Kurt's sister is actually dating ends up being Reed, and I was very surprised by that. I figured it once they showed her, and I'm like, there's no way it's gonna be Reed, like, cause it just seemed kind of out of nowhere, and it technically is, but I thought it was very cool, and it's like they've been doing this for quite a while, because he mentions like, oh, you saw me 2 days ago, and clearly they've had the conversation like, oh, you should probably tell Kurt, like, we should talk about this. And I was wondering if they even knew, because I was like, it wouldn't make sense that they wouldn't know, but I was like, I guess it's possible, because how many people go around like, yep, FBI agent, I work with this person and this person, because they're FBI, so I wouldn't think they really go around like that. But it just makes sense that they know each other, because at some point they would have to have met. And I believe they would talk about that really early on in the series, where it's like they've been to his house like once, or they've been like outside of Kurt's apartment, so that could have been where they met or something. Like this really random thing, like, oh, I'm waiting for Kurt Weller or whatever, something like that. But that should be interesting. I don't know how that's gonna turn out. I would assume Kurt wouldn't like lose his mind or be mad about it, but he'd probably freak out because of course they're agents, so he'd be worried about his sister being hurt, because it's like, well, any of us could die at any moment, and now she has two people she has to worry about on this team that could get killed. So that would probably be his objection, because I feel like that's always the objection for stuff like that when it's a cop show or something. It's like, oh, I don't want you doing this because then she has another person she'll have to be scared about or something like that. But I'm sure that'll all work itself out. But certainly enjoyed this episode. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I want to know what you guys think Orion officially is. So far, it's still super vague, even with that answer, like, that's where you died. That's incredibly vague. We got a little bit of a hint, like I said, with Carter and Jane both having been a part of Orion. It's interesting to, based on everything that's happened, Carter, of course, never actually met Jane, so it's clearly a huge operation that happened, and for whatever reason, that's where they faked her death. So I want to know what you guys think Orion officially is, even though that's super wide open, because there's been no hints whatsoever. This is the biggest hint we've gotten so far, and even that's super vague. It's like, alright, that's where they faked her death, and that's all we get out of it. But if you guys have any speculations as to what it could be, I'd definitely like to hear, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.